Okay.
Uh,
Yeah. Hmm.
where were you born in Albania? Like in what year?
Oh, 1974. So I'm 51 years old.
Hmm.
I have a son that is 17. So, and, similar to Timmy's age.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay. So you have a kind of larger view of the kind of communist era.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I grew up in communism and communism fell in Albania when I was 17. So I remember pretty much everything. Like I lived under communism more than you have been alive. So yeah, so I know the good and the bad and the ugly about communism. Mhm.
Hmm. So like, did you see any resistance to Hoxha like at all?
Any say that again? We broke up for a
Oh,
second.
did you
Any what?
any resistance to Hoxha?
No, not at all. One of the big things during communism was that first of all, maybe you've already done it, so it could be that I'm repeating things that you've already searched about Albania.
Hmm.
Communism came in Albania in 1944, 1945.
Hmm.
It was the leading party that was running the resistance against the,
Italian
in
and
the
Nazi.
in the second world, Italian and the Nazi. Yeah, that's right. But one thing you need to know is that prior to that, Albania, so it declared independence from the Ottoman Empire in
Yep.
1912. And then right after that, there was the First World War, there was the Balkan War, and then there was the Second World War. So for almost like a whole generation, there was almost no education in Albania at all. So the whole country was, I think it was like 70% illiterate. Like people didn't know how to read and write. And one of the things that communism did was that, I mean, they needed to promote their propaganda. And in order to promote the propaganda, they needed to get the people to read and write. So they put a lot of efforts in education. And within like a few years, they were able to the whole country knew how to read and write, and they were in school. But what communism did was communism started I mean, like you could call it brainwashing. So started the propaganda in which anybody that thought. So one of the things that in education in Albania was that the dictator, Enver Hoxha,
Hmm.
the party, and the teacher had to be in uniformity. So they were the source of all knowledge. There was no room for critical thinking. So if you had your own opinion and idea, and it was critical about whatever the teacher or the dictator said, that would not go by. So that was those things. That persecution happened in the very first years of communism, and of course, it was tough times. After the Second World War, Hitler had killed millions of Jews and anybody else that had a different color than white. So like everybody, like people were used to drastic measures at the time. So it's not like people would resist. They saw this party as the party that liberated us from the Nazis. So they were kind of submissive. But anytime somebody had an idea that was different, they would go to jail or they would be shot at. So people learned up very quickly. And then the propaganda was implemented in all the education system in Albania, everywhere. So you could say that in those 40 years of communism, people were totally brainwashed. And they thought that all protection and all knowledge came from, first of all, from the dictator, and then later on from the Bureau, the Communist Party, which then we called it the Labor Party.
Hmm.
It was so bad that, when I look at in retrospective, when Enver Hoxha died in 1985, I believe, the whole country cried for him. Like I cry. I remember myself. I remember exactly where I was when they informed us. I was in the school. and there was a collective hysteria, you could call it. Everybody cried in the same time. People were afraid. They thought, like, who's going to protect us now? Um, so yeah, so there was no, it was the harshest form of communism, and there was hardly any resistance during communism. Another thing that communism did in education in Albania, they would teach. I mean, like, let me tell you about the propaganda very quickly. We woke up in the morning, let's say at 6:30 to go to school. The Voice of the People magazine was delivered to every home. And as children, we had to, and of course, it was pure propaganda. We had to read all the articles in this magazine were how great the party is, how smart the dictator is, how powerful we are, and we are a light to the world. We're the best form of communism, because even the Soviet Union and the other communist countries were not communist enough for us. We were in isolation even against them. So so anyway, that was, I would have to pick up some kind of an article, read it, and I would have to write some kind of a essay how that article impressed me. What impressed me in that article and all of this, and what did I learn about it. And then I would go in school at 7:30. And when I went to school, I had to submit this essay every day. So every day we had to kind of like read the Voice of the People magazine, write an article, an essay. So you were like self brainwashing ourselves. And then later on, you finish the school. I mean, during the school, we had 1 hour of propaganda, and then you finish school, you do homeworks and everything, you go home. We didn't have TV programs. There was only one channel in Albania. Like, you could not have any other channels. Like today, I don't know how many channels there are. Okay, there was no internet at that time either. So the only connection to any kind of information was the TV. But the TV started at 6 o'clock every day and it finished at 10 o'clock. It started at 6 with the news, which was half an hour propaganda and information, but it was mostly propaganda. How everything is going great, the economy is going great, there is no inflation, prices are going down. That was all that was written there. Was, I mean, like, broadcasted there. Then there would be a documentary, which was propaganda again. And then at 8 o'clock, there was another set of news, 8 till 8:30, and then there would be a movie. Um, four days a week, we had movies. The movies would be either Albanian-made movies, which would be propaganda again. You can find a lot of them in YouTube today, black and white, but they might have subtitles. Um, and then, if they were other movies, they were heavy censored, and they would only pick movies from the West that promoted communism or that put capitalism in a very bad light. Um, and then at 10 o'clock, there was another propaganda news, and it was over. So that was the day of an Albanian. Now, you'd think, why would they only have 4 hours of TV a day? They were like, you don't need it more because you're in school during the day, you are then working, you have to do homework, and only from 6 till 10 you can have the TV time, basically. So that was controlled as well. So doing all of that, forcing uh, labor and forcing propaganda, you are kind of like grow up. Oh, and another thing, like, I remember when I was a kid, I would watch movies where they would encourage children to spy uh, on their parents. If their parents thought negatively about communism, they would actually spy on them. So uh, looking at things in retrospective, a lot of people were afraid of what they said because it could get them in trouble. Um, yeah, I'm sure that those movies are still on. I mean, they would be in Albanian. Maybe they would be subtitled in English. I could try to find some of them. Like one of them where you actually watching the movies how this grandfather was a spy of the Anglo Americans and all of this, and he looked like a very nice grandpa that would tell stories to the children. But on the other hand, he was actually spying. He was an intel for Anglo Americans. But these kids were so smart that they had him made, and then he ended up in prison. So as a child, a lot of the children were thinking, like, let me check, if they had some kind of a conflict with their parents, they were like, well, maybe my parents are spies. So it was a very tough time at the time. So parents, out of fear of trouble, they would actually do propaganda to their own children. So there was hardly any resistance at all. Um, yeah,
Okay. So today, what's the general consensus on Hoja?
yeah, it's actually very negative because once once communism fell, I mean, so he died in '85, but communism fell in 1991, and it was one of the last countries where communism kind of fell. And it was the harshest form of communism. And one other thing you need to know about Hoxha is that during his period of his rulership, almost all his, right arm or left arm people, like the best friends and all this, they ended up becoming the enemy of the people, somehow through propaganda. And then they were killed or they were put in prison or quote unquote, they committed suicide. Like, Mehmet Shehu was one of the main secondary, like after him,
Yep.
main leader. And I mean, it was said that he committed suicide, but later on, they showed picture of him, and he had two bullets in his head. So, you know, I mean, very rarely you would shoot yourself twice in your head and you don't die the first time. So, but anyway, so that was the time. So, not a lot of people had a good, yeah, very few people that were like former communists, like even communists, they kind of like denounce their state of communism. And yeah, we have a joke about Albania during communism. We say that one third of the people were communists, one third of the people were spies, and one third of the people were in prison. So that was a joke, of course. It was not one third of the people in prison, but the government that kind of put a lot of kind of like people that would actually spy on their neighbors. Like every neighborhood had a couple of people that would like, and you didn't know that they were spies. They could be teachers, they could be, a professor, they could be an engineer, but they were like in the neighborhood. But actually, they would always bring intel to the government if somebody thinks negatively. So it was not actually strategically positioned. Like you could go in Albania if you thought it was a crime and it was considered agitation and propaganda. It was a crime. So if you said anything against the government or against you didn't like the food or you didn't like the TV or you didn't like anything, you were just critical about something, you would go to jail. And not only you'd go to jail, but let's say my father was a professor in university. If his brother would have done agitation and propaganda, and he would go to jail, my father would also lose his job, and all the next to the kin would lose their jobs, and they would be exiled in remote areas where everybody knew that they were a cousin of somebody that went to jail, and therefore people that kind of ostracized them. Um, so yeah, so it was so tough that when communism fell, people didn't really have any, like even today, rarely you'll meet somebody that has nostalgia. Like they would say, some people say, well, one thing that he did good was he imposed education on everybody. So that was a good thing. But the reason for it was because he wanted to spread his propaganda. So yeah,
Okay. And then obviously there was like some like other groups outside of the country. Like there was King Ahmet Zagu. How is he like seen today?
right, right. So Ahmed Zogu, he had just signed a peace treaty with Italy the day before Italy attacked. Like, so it was sad that like they attacked. His son was born the day that they attacked. So of course he escaped the country. During communism, the propaganda was very, very negative about Ahmed Zogu. Like they said that he took all the gold of the Albania and then he went to exile and he gave it to England, and England owns, or UK owes us the money that Ahmed Zog gave them. Anyway, all of that story. He exiled and moved in different areas. I think he's buried in. Excuse me, 1 second. Çfarë? Lek, shko mirë aty ke televizorit, lutem. Aty ku mi le, merë sa lek të duen edhe fol me nënën. Mund të blesh kofsha tek shpari. E don? Sorry, my son is doing some of the errands. Anyway, and then his son came back to Albania, so he was settled in South Africa. Fun fact about the legislation of the king that we had, before communism, was that a king has to be born in Albania. So when the son of the king the son of the king was born in Albania and then he exiled. But then the grandson, Leka Zogu, so I think he's 40 years old now. Leka Zogu was born in South Africa, but just because they wanted him to be born in Albania, otherwise he could not become king if he ever could become king in the future, they declared the maternity where he was born in South Africa for 24 hours as Albanian land, just so that he would be born in Albania. Anyway, that's just a trivia. Maybe not as. So anyway, the son of King Zog came in Albania, uh, and then he actually called for a referendum so that we could become a monarchy again. Um, the rumors are that he actually won, but the election, the official, said that he did not win. But because there was some agitation after that, the Democratic Party and the first president of the Democratic government in Albania made him person non grata. So he was expelled from Albania, and then he came back. Anyway, today the grandson or the crown prince of Albania, he's living here in Albania. I've actually met him, and I had a coffee with him a couple of years ago. So yeah, nice guy, but he doesn't have any power. I think he works for the government for some kind of a department that just protects the interest of the Albanian people, whether they're in Albania or in Kosovo or in northern Greece and wherever the Albanians live in the Balkans.
And then like so religious persecution was big in communist Albania, but like really, what was it
Yes.
like?
So um, this was interesting. So Albania was a very religious country, predominantly 75% Muslim. Um, so, sorry, somebody's trying to call. So 75% Muslim, about 15% Orthodox, 8% Catholic, very religious, and a lot of religious harmony with one another. But when communism came, communism started with the education. So they did a very powerful propaganda in the first 20 years to the youth, to the children, to the next generation, to the whole next generation of the whole nation of Albania, okay? And in this propaganda, so the communist government didn't really like that the Catholics would kind of have allegiance to the Vatican. They didn't also like that like that any religious person would actually go and confess to their religious leaders, So, and they actually wanted to have they wanted to have all the allegiance to the government, not even to your own family, but to the government. So they did a lot of propaganda. They did a lot of that, religion is opium for the people, like, and then it took about 20 years. So Albania was liberated from the Nazis in 1944, 1945. Um, and then we were members of the Warsaw Treaty, with the Soviet Union until 1966. Then we broke off from them because they were not communist enough. And then in 1967, we declared to be atheistic by constitution. But this came as a request from the Albanian youth. So for 20 years, 21 years actually to be exact, they had brainwashed, so communism had brainwashed the whole education system. And then in 20 years' time, you have a whole generation that says, we don't want to deal with religion at all. So actually, it was the youth that went and destroyed the churches, destroyed the mosques, destroyed any kind of a religious, like a lot of the churches became warehouses. A lot of the mosques became warehouses to put potatoes and stuff like that. Um, yeah. But in 1991, or actually 1990, when Albania allowed or took off. So during communism, a fun fact is that if you just said, "Oh my God," on the street, uh, you you would go to jail because by constitution it's illegal. So you're actually breaking the law by believing. And your neighbor, if your neighbor saw you exclamate, having an exclamation or saying you believe in God, whether Christian or Muslim, it doesn't matter. If you said that you believe in God and your neighbor saw you, your neighbor also had the duty to report you. If he didn't report you, he became an accomplice to your crime, your faith crime. And the reason why he would spy on you is because he would be afraid that his neighbor saw him, that he saw you and did not report. So it was a very tough time. Like I remember talking with grandparents during communism about, do you believe, what is this about God? I had no information at all. I didn't know who Jesus was, who Muhammad was. Everything was totally canceled. So there was no option for people to believe at all. But then in 1991, they allowed back religion to come in the country, and a lot of missionaries came from all over. I mean, like there would be missionaries from the Catholic communities, from the Protestant communities. There were also missionaries from the Muslim, Saudi Arabia, Iran, that came in Albania. Extremism came in Albania as well during the time because nobody knew anything about it. So, but people with a very massive, almost like I hardly know any atheists in Albania today. Like I would have to really seek hard to find a atheist in Albania. Like sometimes I might find a communist that believes in God, but it's very rare to find an atheist. So people pretty much, it was like a spiritual desert that once religion came back, everybody kind of went back. Some of them went back to their roots. Some, became, because their grandfather was a Muslim, they came from a Muslim heritage, they became Muslim again, and the Catholics became Catholics, and the Orthodox kind of became Orthodox. But it was also easier to convert. So today there is a lot of freedom of religion. Like I personally, I come from a Muslim background, but today I am a Christian. So, there is, there is liberty. So there is freedom of religion and there is freedom of conversion in Albania. So Albania, it's actually considered one of the countries at the top of the list for having religious tolerance. I mean, there is always crazy things happening, but it's very isolated.
And then like the transition between Hoja and I believe it's Ramiz Alia. Uh,
Yeah.
how
Hmm.
how was that? Uh,
Yeah. There were when Enver Hoxha died, so they kept it from the people, but Enver Hoxha had some sort of a dementia. So the last few years of his life, his like he would be always on TV, but then suddenly he kind of starts disappearing, and some of his words are kind of were not making sense anymore. So they are kind of like start to hide him away. And during this time, the best friends of Enver Hoxha were Ramiz Alia and Adil Charchani. So they would be when he died. Then it seemed to be I mean, I can tell you the official and I can tell you the rumors, and you decide for it. But
mhm,
in the official one, it was the party that kind of decided, and it was a kind of like his will as well. In the rumors, Nejmiya Hoja, so the wife of Enver Hoja,
yep.
she was from Shkodër, and Ramiz Alia is also from Shkodër. So there could be an inclination that kind of it was decided like that because of their, coming from the same town, like they kind of grew up together and all that. So there was a more stronger relationship there, and for protection reason as well for the family of Enver Hoxha. Yeah, Ramiz Alia became Ramiz Alia was a very so he was a dictator,
Mhm.
but he was a very peaceful. One thing I give to him was like he noticed that in Bulgaria and Romania and all this, the dictators were being killed and all of that. So maybe he knew that it was coming, the end was coming. Another thing you need to know is that because Albania had no relationship with the communist countries either. I mean, our only friends was North Korea and Cuba. We had no other relationship with the other communist countries because to us they were not communist. Like
Mhm.
we did a relationship with China, I think from I don't remember, I think 70 till 78, but that was more to protect ourselves from the Soviet Union because they were going to attack us because we attacked their military base. So yeah, Um, so anyway, he took power, but the country was already in 1985. We were in a economical like it was like this. Albania was a very wealthy country. We have a lot of minerals. We have a lot of like the second country in the world for chromium. We have copper. We have a lot of water in the country. We have it's the second country in Europe for petroleum, for natural gas, and all of this. So it's a rich country. But it was like it's like you have done a lot of savings, and then in those 40 years, Albania kind of like used up all their savings. So during the early years of communism, we lived in a kind of some sort of prosperity. Like I remember when me and my parents, when I was a kid, you could go to a restaurant and you could have a great meal with almost nothing. And but that was until 1980, and then from 1980 till 1990, the country got worse and worse and worse. We started to have um, you know, like because the resources were limited, even though you had money, you could not buy meat, for example. You're allocated for a family of 5 people or 6 people, you're allocated 2 pounds of meat for the whole week. That's very, very little. Like sometimes you eat 2 pounds of meat in one meal, but during that time, you had only, you had no olive oil, you had some sort of a vegetable oil, only 1 liter a week. You had only 1 liter of milk a day. You had only 10 eggs a week as a family. You had only 1 kilogram of sugar a week. So it was like everything was portioned. And the country got more and more depressed, more and more like when communism fell, we were the third poorest country in the world. So it was very, very bad. So that's why probably also nobody was fond of communism anymore. So when the protests started in Albania, I remember. So I actually was at the protests as a kid. I was 17. I just went there because everybody was going there. I had no idea. Somehow it was organized, but it seemed to be. I mean, like officially they said it was spontaneous, but for sure somebody organized it. Um, and when I went to the Central Square, because I literally lived about 15 minutes walk from the Central Square, and they went there, and you can go on videos on YouTube and you can see how the statue was thrown down. I was like 50 yards away from the statue when it fell down. Um, our dictator Ramiz Alia, he was a kind of like he allowed a peaceful transition. I mean, they put some sort of resistance, but then they allowed the change to happen. They allowed free election. There were a couple of parties that emerged during the time, and people chose. At first, they chose again the Communist Party, or the back then it was called the Labor Party. They chose again because they were afraid. I mean, we lived in a time of fear. So during communism, we did have elections, but in the elections during communism, there were two separate boxes, one that was for the Communist Party and one that was against the Communist Party. And everybody knew if you put the ballot in this box or in that box. So everybody, of course, put the ballots at the Communist Party box. So 99% of the people voted for the Communist Party. So it seemed like, but it was not a, but even after communism fell and they allowed free election, people still voted for the Communist Party because they were afraid. And then there were more protests, and I think it was like 6 months later that they had another election, and then the Democratic Party won. The Democratic Party, we have the name Democratic Party, but you could consider it's the Republican Party of U.S. today. So it's the right wing party. I mean, we had another Republican Party, but today that Republican Party is, I don't even know that it exists anymore because we had election a few weeks ago and it's not there anymore. So the Democrats in Albania, I mean, the right wing are called the Democrats, and the left wing in Albania are called the Socialists. So these are the two predominant parties. The Socialists would be a kind of like, you could say that they kind of took the heritage from the Communist Party during communism, but it's not the same. So, I mean, a lot of people are thinking, like the Socialists actually have won again in Albania, but um, they are far from being the communists that you have. Like they have so much more conservatism in Albania, the left wing, than you could say the right wing in Europe. So it's a much more traditional society, and because of that, both parties tend to be more conservative, even though they are left wing or right wing today. Mhm. So yeah, so I would say a big plus to Ramiz Alia. He was taken to court and he was not incriminated because he didn't really. I mean, like he did everything according to the law during communism. So I think there were about 4 or 5 people that died in the protests. So thinking of the harshest form of communism was in Albania, and then the transition was probably the most peaceful one than in any other communist country.
Um, yeah, and then in 1997, I saw that there was some like civil unrest because of pyramid schemes and
Yes.
Ponzi schemes.
Yeah.
So,
Ponzi pyramid schemes. Yeah. Yeah. I remember the time. I mean, I didn't put money in, but my dad put all my savings. I was still very young. So in Albania, you have extended families. So you work, but you bring all the money together in the family. And my dad put it in a Ponzi scheme, just like everybody else in Albania. I mean, you probably know about the Ponzi scheme was like, you submitted this particular person or this particular organization or a business. You submit, let's say, $100, and in 3 months' time, they will double it for you. And I mean, like that's in principle, but some people put 1,000, like they put lek, but let's say, the conversion of $1,000. And then in 3 months' time, they went back there and they got 2,000, so it's a high profit. And soon after, I mean, this thing lasted probably from 90, 94, 95 till 97. By 97, everybody was trying to find money to put in these schemes. I mean, they didn't call them Ponzi schemes or pyramid schemes. They thought, somehow this is how you get rich, like this is how Europe, because even the government. So Salih Berisha was the president at the time. He was the head of the Democratic Party. He's the one that made the king non grata at the time as well. But anyway, yeah, I think it was a lot of immaturity on the people. I would not say that they were wrong or right, but they had a lot of immaturity, like they were on the payroll of these Ponzi schemers in a way. So a lot of people put money in, and then when they ran out of their money, because let's say you put $1,000 in, and in 3 months you get $2,000. What do you want to do? You want to put that money back in because it's like, hey, in 3 months I can get from 2,000, I can get 4,000, right? So people kept getting money out and putting it back in. And then if there was no more money, people start to sell their houses. But because everybody was selling, I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people were selling their homes, their houses, they were selling their houses for half the price because they could not find money to sell a house. So some people got rich because they bought property at the time. That was a smart move for them. But anyway, one of the first pyramid schemes that collapsed was Suda, was called. And then when that one collapsed, it made people afraid. So they went to the other pyramid schemes to pull out the money, and that made all the schemes collapse. So that was in '97. And when that happened, I could probably find a short documentary on it to find more. But anyway, when that happened, people got very much agitated. You could say there was a kind of a north and a south. The north wanted the Democratic Party and Salih Berisha to be in power still. The south wanted to have the socialists in power. And it was almost like to go back to, the socialists would be almost as voting back for the communists because it was like the children of the communists that started this party. So it was a very, people attacked the military warehouses, and the military were also angry, so they surrendered. They allowed all the weapons to be taken. So in 1997, everybody had weapons, and they didn't know what to do with them. So it was like a civil war, but it was also almost like there was no food. Everything collapsed. It was very dangerous to be on the streets in Albania. Like my car at the time, because people shoot in the air, but the bullets come back down. My own car, had 2 bullet holes from blind bullets that fell down. A lot of people were at life threat. I even happened to be once at life threat because somebody tried to shoot at me and there was no police to report the persons. So it was a very, very crazy time. That was in '97. And then in 1998, there was the Kosovo crisis. Kosovo,
Yep, the KLA and
it, yeah, that's right. That's right. So in a way, Kosovo was part of Serbia, but was given to Serbia by the Ottomans when the Ottoman Empire kind of collapsed. They gave different parts of Albania to different Balkan countries that had a better lobbying. So, of course, I'm biased. So I'll say it from the Albanian side, and Serbs have a different story for Kosovo. Okay, so you don't take everything I say for granted because I'm biased on this as Albanian.
oh, me too.
But good. So, but so legally, the Ottomans invaded Albania 500 years ago. And then when they went down in power, They gave Kosovo to Serbia, parts of Albania to Montenegro, parts of Albania to Macedonia, and parts of Albania to Greece. I personally come from a northern part of Greece, but back then was inhabited by Albanians, and they were expelled later on. So, in a way, legally, Turkey gave this lands to these places, but it's the same as if I stole your car and then a few years later I forge the documents and I make the car to seem as it is mine, and then I sell it. So it's a legal transaction when I sell it, but it's a immoral transaction because I stole it in the first place. And that's the case with, I would put it that way, that's the case with the Albanian lands in the Balkans. So today, if you if you walk, you drive outside of the Albanian borders, whether you are north, east, or south, you still drive, and for many, many kilometers, all the people, all the villages there still speak Albanian because they are Albanians. They have been there for over 3,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the case. Anyway, back to the story. In 1998, the big genocide starts in Kosovo. Slobodan Milosevic had already gotten away to some extent in Bosnia by doing a lot of genocide there, and Europe didn't intervene because they were like, it's an internal problem, and they killed a lot of people in Bosnia.
Mm-hmm.
So when they started to do this in Albania, they would actually kill any male that they would find that was like 14 years or older. They would rape every woman that they would find, no matter their age. So a lot of Albanians from Kosovo left the country out of, to save their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And as they did that, a lot of them came in Albania. Some went to Macedonia, to the Albanian lands in Macedonia and other countries as war refugees. And that kind of like united the country. So even though everybody had weapons and they were all going through this crazy time, it kind of dawned on the Albanians that, hey, we need to actually love each other. We need to protect each other. And so they welcomed the Kosovo Albanians in. And this actually unified the country. So from 98 till 2001, we had a kind of a recuperation phase. And as a matter of fact, like I travel a lot, Jasper, today.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ever can make it to come to Albania, maybe you come with Timothy sometimes. He's already made it here. You will find out. I mean, like the movies don't show that, but you'll find out it's one of the safest country and the most friendly country in all the Western world. Like you can go on the streets. There is no. I mean, people don't carry guns anymore. We had to submit all the guns. The government made a lot of efforts that people would submit their guns that they had kind of like stolen from the warehouses, and they yeah, so people eventually gave all the weapons back. Some maybe they didn't, but I mean, today you can go to jail if you cannot carry weapons in Albania unless you have a very unless you're at life threat and you have to prove that you're at life threat. Then you can actually have your own weapon. Otherwise, you cannot carry a gun or even a knife that it's bigger than it's supposed to be. In how many? 5 fingers. Yeah, my son says that the knives cannot be like, let's say you have a Swiss knife, it cannot be longer than 5 fingers. You cannot carry it with you, otherwise you go to jail. But anyway, it's one of the safest countries. People are very friendly. In the north, like, have you seen the movie Taken?
I don't believe I have.
Okay, well, you should see it. It's a great movie, but it makes Albanians look very bad. Okay, so it's Liam Neeson movie, and supposedly his these Albanian criminals, mafia people, and there is a strong Albanian mafia, as there is a Russian mafia and an American mafia and Mexican mafia, whatever. But um, my son says it's the eighth worst mafia in the world. So anyway, uh, there has been some movies where they make it look like Albania is not safe. Like even in this movie, they make it as this Marco from Tropoia, which is north of Albania, the Alps in the north, is a
Mm-hmm.
very dangerous guy. But of course, Liam Neeson, with his special set of skills, he kind of like gets his daughter back and all of that. So great movie, by the way. But anyway, not great for Albania. But that's not the Albania that the real Albania. The real Albania. Like if you go in the north, a lot of visitors, backpackers that go in the north, whether they are youngsters, 18, 19-year old, they will be welcomed in the houses of the people for free. Like you might enter Albania and you might get out. You can stay up to 2 weeks and you can actually make it for free if you knock in people's houses and you say, like I don't have a place to stay for the night. You can actually they will walk. I mean, you cannot do it in the big cities,
Mm-hmm.
but if you do it in remote areas, in the mountainous areas, we have this BESA code of honor, in which if something were to happen to you, uh, the people in the village have to be put to death. It's a crazy law in the mountainous areas. But anyway, so yeah, Albania is a very safe country, and I think it became safe because of this unification effort when the war in Kosovo happened. So
Mm-hmm.
of course you probably know that Kosovo now has declared independence.
Yep.
Not every country has recognized it, but like half the countries have recognized it, and some, Serbia, of course, has not recognized it yet, and there is a chance of war because they've set armies around the border as we speak. And I have friends that are military and they're deployed at the border in Kosovo right now. But anyway, but the country is united, and yeah, and we have all of the difficulties, but Albania is improving. There is a lot of industry, very little agriculture. Albania is 80% mountains.
Mm-hmm.
During communism, because we had no food, we terraced, like we literally terraced the hills and some of the mountains so that we could create some flatlands so that we could plant some wheat or, because we had no industry during that time. That's why we had this economical depression. But today the country is becoming very industrial. Um, yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
and then do you think that like the NATO bombings of Serbia would have at least somewhat contributed to like Albania NATO relationships eventually, like kind of having Albania join NATO, or was that something else?
Yeah. No, I think this is politics. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The in the area, NATO needs a kind of a stronghold, and the best friend that America has in the Balkans is Albania and Kosovo. So when I mean, of course, they liberated Kosovo. They helped, UK and US. It was not actually NATO.
Mm-hmm.
It was US and UK asked NATO, but NATO, because it was many European countries and they didn't want to interfere because it would be problematic for the relationship with Russia and the other Slavic nations. So US, kind of like US and UK said, we're going to do it on our own. I mean, of course, there was a lot of genocide. So we're very thankful. And when they did it, kind of like, for Albania, it was like America kind of saved the day for a second time for Albania. So here is another fun fact: U.S. is the first country to recognize Albania when we declared independence from the Ottoman Empire. That's like in 1912.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the reason for that, I mean, part of the reason for that, we have it in the National Library. There is this correspondence. There was this missionary from U.S. Called Kennedy, that from a evangelical Reformed church, that he was in south of Albania, but he used to be the Sunday school teacher of the children of Woodrow Wilson. Now I know Woodrow Wilson is not like one of the best presidents of
Yeah.
U.S., but he was very good to Albania. He was very good to Albania. So Woodrow Wilson, I mean, he was racist and all that, but
Yeah.
um, but anyway, Woodrow Wilson writes to his Sunday school, the children's Sunday school teacher that is a missionary in Albania, and he says, "Hey, like all of these big powers, like Germany, France, and all of these countries, have gathered together to decide how to split this area. So he said, do you know anything about it? They say that Albania doesn't exist anymore, that it's only a notion, but it's
Yeah.
not actually the people are either Turks or Slavic or, but there is no Albanians in Albania. And
Right.
uh, and and this Kennedy says no, it'll be very sad because they are an ancient people. They are as ancient as the Greeks, and it would be sad that this culture and language and all this to be lost because it's ancient. So this, I think, it was influential for the America to kind of recognize. So they recognized Albania. I think it was 1913. Now, when they recognized it, Italy kind of invaded Albania. Like soon after that. So there was wars and wars and wars. But anyway, the first recognition came. So again, in 1998, there was the war in Kosovo, and then the first country to recognize Kosovo was again America. So this was a big thing. So Albania kind of was like, hey, to America, if you want to have a base or if you need us, we send soldiers to, in the wars in Iran or Afghanistan or all of these other deployments. And it soon helped Albania become a member of NATO. It was also for our own protection because we were at risk still from the Slavic nations, in particular Serbia, not the other Slavic nations are fine, like Bulgaria or Croatia, I mean, Croatia was in war with Serbia too. So Macedonia was fine. I mean, now is fine. We had some issues, but now it's, you know, now, Jasper, this is politics.
Hmm.
I've traveled in all of these countries, and I mean, Serbs don't like Albanians and Albanians don't like Serbs, and Greeks don't like Albanians and Albanians don't like Greeks. So there is some, because these countries have been for 2,000 years at war with each other. But when I travel there, people in Serbia and people in Greece are as friendly and as hospitable as people in Albania. So unfortunately, it's politics, and sometimes
Hmm.
us as people we're driven by politics, and that's sad. Like, but the people themselves in the Balkan they have similar traits, even though we speak different languages, and even though we kind of are biased in the way we tell our history, we still are friendly, and actually it's very safe even in these other countries when I think about it. So yeah, I mean, for you as American, you would be much more welcomed in Albania and Kosovo than in Serbia, but even there you would still be treated fair, I think.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah.
And the Albanian opinion on Tito.
Sorry,
Sorry.
say that again. it's
Yeah.
it's muffled.
I was eating something. Albanian
Oh.
opinions on like Tito.
On what?
Joseph Braz Tito.
Oh,
Yeah.
Tito. So Albanians both in Albania and Kosovo, they like Tito.
Uh huh.
The reason for it is so when Tito came in power, he actually tried to get even Albania under Yugoslavia, and actually Tito was not for the Warsaw Treaty, so he was not, he was communist, but he didn't like the Russians, and he was a Croat. So, but he was a dictator, a very powerful one. But he gave a lot of freedom to the, like, Kosovo was not actually a autonomous republic, but he gave autonomy to Kosovo, that they could have their own flag, they could teach their own language and all of this, which Slobodan then, when Tito died, then later on there was another leader, but he was not as strong of a dictator. So the dictator of Serbia, that was Slobodan Milosevic. Slobodan
Yep.
Milosevic was not the leader of all of Yugoslavia, but Serbia was the biggest republic. It was like like Russia and the Soviet Union. Like so he had much more power. He had much more military. So the other countries are kind of like were very small, compared to Serbia. So he then Slobodan he took away I mean the republic status. Like Yugoslavia had, I think it's 7 or 8 republics. Like
Yeah.
Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, Macedonia, Montenegro,
Yeah.
Kosovo. Yeah, something like this. But yeah, before Tito, Kosovo was totally integral part of. I mean, it's inhabited by Albanians. Like by a majority, of course.
Hmm.
But like even today, it's 98% Albanian speaking, very patriotic. Albanians in Kosovo are more patriotic about Albanian nationalism than Albanians in Albania. Like, think about that. So, so they actually called Tito Batsa Tito. Bats means father in the northern dialect. So that was an interesting thing. And yeah, um, but of course, that's not the case anymore. Like Croatia and Serbia don't like each other because Serbia did a lot of atrocities in Croatia as well. Like even if you go today in some of the most beautiful towns like Dubrovnik, you'll see all of the destruction that they try to do there with, like you'll see all of these beautiful. Have you seen maybe a little bit on the movie Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Like some of the best sites are played in Dubrovnik, in Croatia. But during the war, Serbs had so much hate, that they tried to destroy some of these beautiful sites. So yeah, um, yeah. Anyway,
Well, I think that's just about it. Thank you for talking with me about this
yeah,
subject.
yeah. You're welcome.
This
Hmm.
was great, and honestly, I'd love to do this again in the future. So,
Yeah, sure. Sure. Well, can I look how you look like? Or, I mean, we only talked, but we didn't
uh,
see each
I
other.
don't have a
Can you?
camera on the
Oh,
computer.
you're on the computer.
I can swap it
Never
with
mind.
my
Next time.
phone.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to introduce you to my son, and maybe you never know. One day you can come to when you are grown up or an adult, and you come and pay us a visit. We would love to, show you around
Yeah,
and befriend my sons.
I can call you
So,
on my phone real quick so that I can have the video.
what?
I can call
Uh,
you on my phone. I have my phone number by me.
I don't know if it works though on the phone. I don't know. I don't have an iPhone, so
I don't
we
either.
cannot do
I have
FaceTime.
WhatsApp on my phone too. I have it on both.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
So let me.
Yeah, sure. If you want, you can call on WhatsApp on the, yeah. And yeah, let's do this again. I have to drive. I have a long drive tonight, but I'm hoping, yeah. All right. Let me bring it to my son Edon. He's just a year older than you. And, well, if he's here, looks like Edon. Hey, you want to say hi to this friend that I just made? He's Timothy's friend, actually, and he's doing a study on Albania. So here, you can talk to him too. He speaks good English. Hi. Hello, how are you? Good. So they get the second cool film. No, no, it's I detached it. Yeah. Okay. Try to speak again. Maybe your microphone is.
Oh yeah, maybe. Let me. Wait, no, wait. Was that muting?
No, we don't hear you, man.
Oh.
Oh, hi. Now
Oh.
we can hear you. Yeah,
There we
that's
go.
better.
I just muted and unmuted.
How are you?
Good.
So this is Jasper. Jasper, this is Adon. And Jasper, actually, he knew a lot of. He probably knows more about our dictator and all that than you do. So he was doing your studies. He's doing his studies. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But he kind of has a lot of interest in Albania. So we have a rich history. Besides modern Albania, not that good. No fun. He'd like to come to America one day. Maybe. Yeah, yeah, true. So
Yeah, well, it was a great call with you. I gotta go edit this all up. But,
All right, yeah, there was a lot of information, but
yep.
good talking with you. And if you need any help, even tomorrow, I know your paper is due on Tuesday, so you need more help or you want to verify something, let me know, all right?
Yep. Have a good day. Thank you.
All right, God bless. Yeah, bye. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Well, I'm really flattered that you're studying about Albania and the Balkans, and so I'm born and grew up here. So, yeah, uh, any questions you have, let me know.